morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Maria Brindelmeyer. I'm the Youth Lead Coordinator with the Youth Power Learning Project at Making Sense International, and delighted to welcome you all to our Youth Lead webinar series. Today the topic is youth participation in peace and civic and democratic processes, and we will have an introduction by a young changemaker from Sudan, and then some example projects from Zimbabwe and Mali. Before we get started, just a few items. You can promote the webinar on social media and use the hashtags that are on the screen here. And just some quick introduction of our team. You see me on the left, Nilima, who is also the project manager, will join some of our webinars. Abolaji is going to be on the call, or is on the call today. And Diana, who is an intern with Mike McCabe, the youth coordinator at USAID, has joined us today as a guest. And Ikenna is also an Atlas Core Fellow working with us on the project. So before we again go into the topic, just some quick background in terms of youth power and youth power learning and Youth Lead. Youth Lead is part of a larger project called Youth Power Learning that is focused on positive youth development. And positive youth development has been designed as being programs that recognize youth need for assets, and assets could be skills or funding, the ability to leverage those assets, that means agency, and the ability to contribute to positive change for themselves and their communities, that's contribution. And then last but not least, they should be surrounded by an enabling environment that supports them. So until last year, Youth Power Learning's main focus was on youth supporting organizations, including organizations that are implementing youth programs or doing research, and the focus had not been on youth directly. But with Youth Lead, which was launched at the World Bank's Youth Summit in December 2018, so just a few months ago, the focus is on youth themselves, young change makers like many of you on the call, between 15 and 35 years old. So the vision for Youth Lead is to become the global hub for young change makers aged 15 to 35 and enable them to maximize their impact through networking, mentoring, and accessing information. And the platform offers a great opportunity for youth from different countries, different networks to inspire, learn from each other, connect beyond their traditional circles, and benefit from many diverse resources and information. And with Google Translate on every page, it is available to a larger group of youth. And for a description of the Youth Lead Ambassadors and some of the activities, let me hand it over to my colleague Abolaji.
Thank you very much, Maria. So talking about Youth Lead Ambassadors, and so in the month of April, we selected 20 young changemakers as Youth Lead Ambassadors. About 1,500 young changemakers applied for Youth Lead Ambassadors role. The ambassadors are sharing information about Youth Lead with their networks, increasing engagement with Youth Lead through discussion groups, social media, and now also by sharing their experiences through the webinars. This is a series of webinars led by Youth Lead Ambassadors. Our speakers today are Rahama from Mali and Tatenda Ronald from Zimbabwe. And we'll also be giving a background on both speakers later on. In addition to selecting the Youth Lead Ambassadors, we are also organizing campaigns. We have currently our photo contest ongoing, where we shortlisted 60 photos, and which are also being voted for. So members can actually go and vote for their favorite photos on our Facebook page. Another is we are also building, we're also preparing to for our video campaign, which will also start soon. We are organizing webinars. Of course, some of these webinars are led by YouthLead Ambassadors, just like the one we currently are, and also some by our sponsors. We have about 20 sponsors that we are collaborating with on YouthLead, and with that, I would then go into introducing our speakers directly and also the topic for today. Today's topic is titled Youth Participation in Peace, Civic and Democratic Processes, and a case from Zimbabwe and Mali. We are really delighted to have one of our two of our YouthLead ambassadors, speakers, and who will also be sharing their experiences, lessons learned from different perspectives. Our guest speaker is Dua Adams, who is from Sudan. Dua will set the premise of our discussion and share a story, a background, and advocacy work in ensuring peace in Sudan. Our first YouthLead speaker is Rahama, a project officer preventing radicalization in prisons at Think Peace Mali, a Malian organization working on issues of governance, peace, security, and violent extremism in Mali. Our second YouthLead speaker is Ronald Tatenda from Zimbabwe. He's a youth leader passionate about youth development and engagement in politics. He supports efforts that target youth involvement in social economic development, and also as a beneficiary, that puts youth as not just beneficiaries, but also key stakeholders in the discussion, in political discussion and engagement. We will not take any questions immediately after our first speaker, but then would attend to all the questions at the end of the webinar. So please feel free to post your questions in the chat on the right side of your screen throughout the webinar, and we'll get to the questions at the end. So at this junction, I would like to call on Dua to speak to us and share our experiences so far. Hello, Dua.
Hi, Amolde. How are
you? Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the webinar.
Thank you so much. Firstly, I want to thank YouthLead for inviting me to be a guest speaker in this webinar. I think it's a very important and interesting topic. So, as you mentioned, I am a social entrepreneur. I am Dua Adams from Sudan, first of all. I'm a social entrepreneur and an Atlas Core Fellow. And I'm here in US at Metro Lab Network. I'm a social media specialist and a web designer. But then my passion is to use technology to provide solution to chronic problems, especially the one we are facing in Sudan and Africa. I founded my social enterprise, my academic platform, in 2017. It's a professional development platform. It combines different professional development opportunities targeting Sudanese and African youth. And mainly, our purpose from it is to raise Sudanese and African professional youth awareness about providing opportunities and help them get access to better quality education. And our vision is also to be Sudanese #1 educational information and services provider platform, and to build a generation of Sudanese and African professionals who can who has the needed knowledge and experience to build a continent, not just their country. So yeah. Today I'm gonna talk about our youth in Sudan, our youth role in the peaceful protesting that has been happening in Sudan for the past 9 months. So, for a general background, we all know that Africa has the youngest population. And basically, Sudan has a youthful society with like 40.8% of the population is under age of 15, and 53.7% are between 15 and 65. So we have like the median age between 19 years old. So that's based on the UN report for 2017 and 2019. So we are a young nation, actually. For the past 30 years of Omar al-Bashir regime, youth were like suffering from oppression and restriction from all like forms of freedom, like freedom of speech, freedom of belief, and even freedom of like wearing what they want to wear, like especially for women. So and the participation in like the government was very limited, and and it was limited actually for those who affiliated with the like governing political party. So it was very difficult for youth to be part of what is happening in like a political level in Sudan. So and like on the other hand, there were like a lot of ongoing conflicts happening in different areas in Sudan, and like in Darfur, in Nuba Mountain, and in Blue Nile, and those conflicts like really negatively affect aspects, all aspects of youth life, like health, education, livelihood, and this actually led to the emergence of the child solidarity phenomena we are like suffering from right now in Sudan. So, but yeah, the good thing is despite all this oppression and all like all these restrictions during the past 3 decades, like especially in the last 10 years, like Sudan have witnessed a revolution of like civil society movement led by youth, where youth were finally able to find their voices and advocate for their rights, which was like a big movement in Sudan. So this movement like created it actually creates a parallel system to the weak governmental services. So they managed to organize themselves to fill the gaps in social issues like education, career development, youth empowerment, and even youth inclusion. So I like myself, I work in different organizations, local NGOs, who were like focusing on basic education and career development before I start my social enterprise. And this movement actually brought youth from different like political, ethnic, religion, and social backgrounds together, and they like allowed them to plan for a better Sudan. So it was really like a fundamental point where everyone was like working for Sudan and not just for themselves, and they were like trying to really fill the gap between what was like the poor services that was provided by the government and what they can actually do. So yeah, and like this perspective and new ideology, which came like which came with this movement, it really acted as a like foundation that led to the success of like Sudan uprising, what's happening. So yeah, so this the Sudanese uprising actually started in December 2018. The Sudanese people like took the streets asking for the step down of the 30 years dictator Omar al-Bashir, and we were like, yay. Like they played like the youth played a vital role. Like they actually like named it the youth revolution because it was led by the youth, and it was like the first time that youth and contribute on what actually was happening. So they played a vital role in the revolution and the political process. And they managed to withdraw the president, Omar Bashir, after 5 months of continuous protest. So it was like a big winning. So it was yay. Sadly, I wasn't there. For me, it was sadly because I wasn't there in Sudan. I felt the need to be there, but at the same time, I was trying to do my best through social media here from US to to connect people to share what was happening there, to make like a pressure on different levels, so we can make what we want true. So I was using social media. I started developing a website that contained a lot of articles and all the incidents that was happening at that time. And yeah, sadly, like the road of freedom, it wasn't that easy, and it wasn't that lovely. It was long and it was full of sacrifices. Youth gave hundreds of murderers and thousands of injured. For me, I lost one of my friends, and it was like it was a disaster for us, and it was a tragedy. But at the same time, they believed in what they were doing, and that for us was enough. So yeah, so they gave their lives, so like to see people of Sudan experience the freedom and the peace and the justice, which the logo of the revolution in Sudan. So yeah, and I can keep like going, but then this till now I'm just talking about the youth on the street protesting, making a setting, doing a big movement on the ground, but at the same time, and the other hand, there was like another part of the Sudanese who were like playing the political process with the military. So we have this Sudanese Professional Association, which is an umbrella association of 15 different Sudanese trade unions. And it started to lead the political process, representing the voice of the street. So SPA is like association established parallel to the government control association to be the voice of the professionals. Wow. They started in 2017. The organization objective, firstly, the organization objective was just to support professionals' rights and advocate for introduction of a minimum wage and other workers' rights. But then, after the revolution started, the mandate of it just has quickly changed, and they became demanding the step down of the president more than just anything else. So yeah, and over time, the SPA become very popular among Sudanese people, and all over the country. And their weekly schedule, they start doing this schedule for the protesting, and their weekly schedule became a guide for the protest all over the country. So, and most of them are young, so most of them are from youth. So this, people start feeling that, yay, we finally have a representatives from youth in the government. So yeah, so we felt yay.
I totally relate. Victory at last. Thank you. Yeah,
exactly,
thank you very much.
Exactly.
Thank you for sharing, the stories and the experiences so far, and how you've been able, even while being here, been able to really lead and mobilize youth for the change that you really want to see. Thank you for that, Dora. All right, so I'm going to advance next to Rahama. Rahama, who is also joining us from Mali. Rahama will be sharing with us her experience, with change making or also preventing extremism in Mali. Rahama, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi. All right, so I'm just going to hand over to you, and please do justice to your presentation.
Okay.
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, please go ahead with your presentation, Rahama.
Okay. Okay. And thank you, Abulaji, for giving me the floor. So, I will start by sharing my story. It's like a story of a lot of Malian youth engaged in different areas in the society in order to prevent conflict and to prevent violence, extremism, and radicalization. So in 2015, I and some friends, we decided to come together instead of working into our side, to come together and then to take action and then create Think Peace. At the beginning, it was an youth association, and now it's become an NGO working in the issue of preventing conflict between communities and conflict between security forces and population, but we are most focused on preventing violence extremism. So as a project officer, my focus area is working in prison system, because we found that since at the end of 2017 that radicalization is happening in the prisons. So we decided to focus also in this area, and so that to prevent it in the prison, because we have a lot of youth in the prison now. So since we starting to realize that the phenomenon of violence extremism wasn't well known, especially in the penitentiary agent side. And also those they are facing, currently we have in the prison a lot of prisoners, extremism prisoner or terrorist prisoner, so they don't know how to deal with them. So we have established a de-radicalization process. But basically in Mali, we have started since the crisis started in 2012. So we are still facing a lot of challenges. For example, in 2015, the government and some army group have signed the peace agreement, but till now, the process, 5 years after that, we have dealing with a lot of issues. We can't implement it effectively, what we have planned in the project. So the hope of lasting peace is particularly fragile among young people. Many of them join the terrorist group. The problem is what youth are victim and actor at the same moment. And the majority of Malian population are youth that are under 16 years. So there is a lot of challenges, both youth, young men and then young women that are involved in violence. So we have trying to do our best in so that to get off of those groups and then to make them resilient and then to show them that there is a perspective and a better life if we decided to work together instead of thinking that security is a government matter or security forces matter. But we all have a big role to play while concerning our security. We can all do something into our own area. So sometimes we do it through awareness campaign activities in a lot of communities, and then in some communities it's in public debate in the different national language, instead of to make them aware of the role in preventing violence extremism or preventing conflict in general in their communities. And then we let them know they can contribute by working with the government. And then sometime we organize a debate between authorities and population so that they can talk about the problematic, the different challenges we have in our society and what they can do together to solve this issue, because there is a serious issue of trust between security forces and population. So that's make our relation complicated and how to work together, because some youth, after informing security forces about what was going wrong in the society, have been killed. So there is a serious issue of witness protection. So we are trying to make them to build the trust between those two communities and how they can work together. So it's still challenging, but we are still continuing, because we think that it's our duty to raise awareness among our communities, and especially youth who are victims and actors at the same moment, how they can be conscientious of their act and how they can work together to have peace. Hello?
Yes, we continue, please, Rahama, we can hear you.
Okay. I will just take one example. In 2013, we had marginalized and isolated communities in the northern part of Mali, in Gao region, named Kaji Dar Salam. So we have a lot of youth who have joined the terrorist group called Mujao. So after the signature of peace agreement, so we came back into the communities and then to ask them, because they were in jail, so we did some advocacy and then they were released. So we asked them what they want us to do to make them resilient, and so that to facilitate also their reintegration back in the society. So they said that they want to do agriculture. So we just decided to finance with $5,000 a project. We call it Grow the Hive, to grow peace in these localities, and then they provide us land, and then we train them on how to create and manage a cooperative, and also we bought some material to do agriculture. And then there were 13 young boys and young men, and then we went together, we trained them, and after that they're trying to do agriculture. And then we're trying to create like a chain of distribution between them and the environment communities, and so that they can buy the product the youth will do. And then now they are doing potatoes, tomatoes, onions, and now since 2 years the project is continuing without us, because everything we are doing, we are trying to make the communities to have the ownership of what we are doing, because think peace, one day maybe we will disappear, or one day we will focus on another issue. So it's important, if you help a community, that this community feel belong to what we are doing, and then they take appropriate ownership of what we are doing, and so that the day you are not here, they are able to continue our work. And now I'm still happy anytime when I travel to visit them, to see how they are developing and how the community become more and more resilient and develop. And even the neighborhood community, sometimes they just came to them and to ask them how they can train them. And also they have established like a kind of microfinance. So they have some amount. If, for example, I, as you from Kaji Dar Salam, if I want to start a small business, they give me money, so I will start my own business. When I will make progress, so I will return back the money into the communities, and then I will contribute in community development by recruiting another youth to work with me in those localities. So this is one action among a lot of action we are trying to do. So we think that it's really important that everyone start to work in his own area, youth, women, authorities, security forces, to work into our area, and so that we can make impact. And also I will advise I will advise my peer youth to take action. You know, in Africa they get used to say that youth is the future. I say that there is no more present than now, and youth are before being the future, youth are the present, and the future, it's in the present. We should prepare it. So they should get involved to contribute to make their own communities a better place for everyone, because we are convinced that with the Ubuntu spirit, we are all linked. My humanity is tied to yours. So if I'm doing something, I should consider you, and then we should work together instead of to leave no one behind. So that's all. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you would also speak about the role of Youth Lead so far in your change
activities. Okay. As a role of youth lead activities, the phenomenon of radicalization and violence extremism is not only countries matter or religious belief or ethnic group belief, but it's everyone matter, and any countries, any ethnic group are protected against this phenomenon of violence extremism. So as a role, so hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. As youth lead platform, so I will. So youth lead platform give me a real opportunity to share and then to collaborate with the other change makers around the world, to share what I'm doing and also to learn from their perspective and the best practice they are doing in their communities, and most importantly, their feedback on what I am doing and how I can improve it. And also I hope through what I'm doing to inspire other youth to take action, to do something in his community. It can be in different area, different from peace building, but to inspire other youth to take action. And also my peer also can really help me by connecting me to another youth peace builder around the world, or some organization or youth working mainly in the cases of violence, radicalization in prisons, because it's a new phenomenon here. So we are still learning how to implement the best practices so that we can solve immediately this issue into our prisons. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
So I'm going to hand over to Anna, and she'll be asking some questions from you.
Okay.
And so if you could.
Okay.
Okay. So Rama, we have some questions for you. So first question is, can you elaborate on the wellness campaign, or what nonviolent, decorous public debate looks like?
Hello, Rama. Did you hear the question?
Hello?
Can you hear me, Rama?
Hello? Yeah. Now I can hear you.
Okay. So the question is, can you elaborate on the wellness campaign, or wellness campaigns that you've done, and what nonviolent, like decorous debate looks like?
Okay. For example, let's take an example of one of our project we call ARC. It's addressing the root causes of conflict. So generally every month, one Saturday we hello?
Yes, go ahead, Rama. We can hear you well.
Okay. I was talking about the ARC project. We call it addressing the root causes of conflict. So every month we went into a communities, marginalized communities or rural communities, and then during all the day, for example, we started by doing a kind of how to say it in English. Yeah, so we have like a debate. We went in, for example, in the market, in the school, and also at the end of the day, we organized a big debate gathering traditional leaders, religious leaders, security forces, community youth, and young men and young women, and then we discussed about what is security, what security means to them. and also what is violence extremism, and also what they can do to prevent it. And also we talk about the national politic the government has adopted last year to prevent violence extremism and terrorism in Mali. So we talk about the 5 pillars of this national politics, because the population don't know it, and most of the population didn't go to school. So we did it in national language instead of to raise awareness, and after that we discussed about it. And anytime we did video and photo, and then after we finish, so we post the video on Facebook and social media in general, instead that to reach a lot of people. So since we started, we have noticed that now it's a lot of communities that are calling us to go into the community to talk about the issue, because there is a lot of definition people are giving, for example, to violence extremism, or here in Mali they are linked violence extremism to Muslim religion. So that's really a big mistake. So we're trying to raise this awareness campaign so that the population can real understand what is violence extremism, or what is the process of radicalization, and how they can contribute to prevent it.
Right. So thank you. And the next question I have for you is, how are you able to gain the trust from the government when you proposed your policies?
The government, dealing with the government is not really is not an easy issue. So what we started to do at the beginning is to doing the power mapping. So we have trying to find out to figure out who can be our ally, and then who can be the real opponent. And also in Mali we have 2 ministries dedicated in peace building. So, and the one is in charge of terrorism and violence extremism, and the one is in charge of reconciliation. So we went to them, and then we discussed about what we can do. And we don't need money from them. We just need them to accept, to buy in what we will propose to them, because we have noticed that there is no national politics or national strategies to preventing violence extremism. And also when the government has adopted, they didn't provide any role to the communities. The communities has not been involved in document elaboration and implementation. So we did a national symposium. So the government allow, and then they come, and after when we finish, we propose them our recommendation, and at that moment they integrate our recommendation in the national document. And now we are working together in some area, like preventing radicalization in prisons. They gave us authorization, because have access here in prison, it's so difficult in Mali, it's so sensitive. So now they accepted, and we work together in the prisons. And also any issue linked to the violence extremism or radicalization, now the government call us, we collaborate together.
All right. Thank you so much. And we'll be moving to our next speaker.
My name is Ronald Tatenda, the YouthLead Ambassador from Zimbabwe. I'm also working with the National Association of Youth Organizations in Zimbabwe. I am a youth leader who is passionate about youth development, engagement in politics, and I also support efforts that target youth involvement in socio-economic development, and using the 3-lens approach, which views the youth not only as beneficiaries but as stakeholders, leaders, and also partners. So in today's youth webinar, we are focusing on youth and peace building, and the case from my country, Zimbabwe. So as many African countries, the youth in Zimbabwe do constitute more than 67.7% of the population, and I also believe that the youth have got a very huge role to play in terms of promoting, building and sustaining peace. But however, the tension, that continues to exist between the young people and, the elderly, continues, and that also pertains to the power struggles, the control over power, resources, and people. So faced with the deepening economic crisis in Zimbabwe, the young people here, remain prone to violence, abuse, and threats to sustainable peace. However, youth inclusion in peace building, it remains key, and these can be seen from the dictates of the Youth Development Index, while also the Youth Development Model, tries to ensure that the full participation of youth in all spheres of, of life are recognized, and that also includes, peace building. So this webinar will address how the youth can effectively participate to foster sustainable peace, development, and not only looking at the case of Zimbabwe, but also, globally. Right. Youth inclusion in peace building for sustainable development. So in Zimbabwe, the exclusion of young people in terms of building peace and promoting peace, can be noted. And also the failure to harness the potential of youth to achieve sustainable peace cannot be ignored, because earlier on I've shared that the youth constitute more than 67.7% of the total population, and hence their inclusion in terms of building and promoting peace must be emphasized. So the youth in Zimbabwe, they are often associated with violence and also regarded as disruptors of peace, and this type of narrative is the one that we are also seeking to change, as we are advocating for the engagement of youth as equal stakeholders, and partners in terms of peace building efforts. So peace building is an issue that I am really passionate about, because without peace, there's no development. Without development, there's also no peace. So I am really passionate about seeing that positive impact that young people can play in terms of being important catalysts, in realizing sustainable peace, not only in Zimbabwe but globally. So the meaningful youth participation in peace building, begins at an individual level, spreads through the community, national, regional, continental, and also at a global level. But this must also be noted that the youth have got a huge, energy and power that must be harnessed to help societies to heal, to reconcile, and also to progress, even in post-conflict situations. So according to this map that we are actually seeing, Zimbabwe is cited to be the 10th highest under the Fragile States Index, and its score is 102.3 among all countries in the world. So a fragile state has got many attributes, which include an economic decline, human rights violations, and a widespread, of violence, which is a threat to peace. So that map is mostly red and orange, noting that Zimbabwe is characterized with huge levels of violence against its. So, for instance, here in Zimbabwe, last year on the 1st of August, there was a lot of violence that took place after demonstrations and protesters, and which resulted in the death of civilians, including young people. And also the 2019 January 14 to 16 protests, which also went violent and resulted in the death of citizens. So that shows the state of affairs in Zimbabwe in terms of peace and violence. So that is really flagging out the need of the role that young people must be playing in Zimbabwe in terms of building sustainable peace. So apart from that, there is then the use of community. There is the use of community youth dialogues, arts, sports, as tools to build sustainable peace. So political and electoral violence, as I cited before, is the main predominant conflict issue that communities want it to be given, priority in Zimbabwe in terms of facilitating, successful peace, healing, and reconciliation process. So we also work with an organization that is also focusing on peace building, which is the Heal Zimbabwe Trust, and they also have this report which noted, the above element that I have just shared. So, guided by the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2250, which talks about youth, peace, and security, it makes it clear that the recognition of the positive contributions and efforts of youth to peace, must not be ignored, because these set the overall framework, to support the efforts of young people. And here in Zimbabwe, we then initiated a campaign where we are saying, as young people, no youth must be left behind. So the Leave No Youth Behind campaign, is an initiative that we started with young people in Zimbabwe to ensure that the youth are the torchbearers in terms of building and sustaining peace in Zimbabwe. So when we began this campaign, we had the various stakeholders in Zimbabwe, which included the government of Zimbabwe, the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Recreation, the non-state actors, the students, the church, women, persons with disabilities, and also children, because we understand that in terms of building and sustaining peace, no one must be left behind is important. So we also believe that engaging the youth at a local level, remains key to ensure that inclusion and that no youth is being left behind. Because when we then started this campaign, we made sure that we carried out consultations in the 10 provinces of Zimbabwe, which then paved way for this campaign, which we are using to build and sustain peace in Zimbabwe. The young people themselves also came up with the Leave No Youth Behind peace pledge, which resulted in young people themselves collecting signatures and signing to commit to peace in Zimbabwe before and during the 2018 elections. So under this campaign of promoting and building peace, we are working with different and a number of organizations that are also affiliating to us, the National Association of Youth Organizations. So these also include Youth for Peace and Development, Mutasa Youth Forum, CYDT, MatSouth, Yield Trust, For Youth by Youth, and at a national level, we are also working with the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, which is an independent commission that was set up by the government of Zimbabwe to spearhead peace processes, in Zimbabwe. Right. So positive youth development for sustainable peace. So despite the increasing recognition of the importance of young people in the world today, Sub-Saharan Africa has the lowest levels of youth development, and Zimbabwe is included, as evidenced on the map that we are also seeing there. Zimbabwe is completely in red, showing a very low level of youth development, and that is from 0 to 0.4%. So when we have a scenario where youth development is at such a very low level, and vis-a-vis the importance of youth in taking part and participating in all civic processes of the country, that really shows you the state of affairs in Zimbabwe. However, youth inclusion in peace building is one key component that Zimbabwe is lacking, and as the index is calculated, the use of 5 main domains to calculate that index include the levels of education, health and well-being, employment and opportunity, civic participation, and political participation. So somebody may say, but Zimbabwe has got a very high literacy rate. You've got a lot of young people who are educated. But some of the domains that are used to calculate that index include civic participation and also political participation. But if you look at these two, for instance, civic participation and political participation, you also see that in Zimbabwe we are having a lot of shrinking, the shrinking of civic space. And civic space, we are looking at the freedoms of association, assembly, and expression. So, and also in terms of political participation, the space is really closing up on young people. Hence the low levels of youth development. The Leave No Youth Behind campaign sought to build up on the work that other actors were also doing. For instance, the UNDP, the support to peace building and increased access to sustainable livelihoods project, and apart from that, because we do not also work in silo, but we also exist to support other current works that were already being done by other actors in terms of building and sustaining peace in Zimbabwe. Also, the campaign has got a direct reach of more than 500 young people in each community as direct beneficiaries. Okay, in terms of good practices, successes, and challenges, yes, the campaign has managed to take off. However, we are also facing a number of challenges. In terms of good practices, we recognized that the bottom-up approach is a very good form of engagement with regards to peace building, where we are, going deep down to the grassroots to understand the issues of young people, how they want to partake, building and promoting peace in their own communities, starting at an individual level, then coming up to the community and up to the national level. So using the dictates of the Youth Development Index to ensure a meaningful development of youth and their inclusion in civic and political processes, including peace building, is also something that we also utilize. And utilizing the Leave No Youth Behind principle to ensure that the youth are included in all processes affecting their lives, guided by Section 20 of the Zimbabwean Constitution, which really articulates the need for young people to be at the fore of participation in terms of economic, political, and social spheres of their life. So in our engagements, we also harness the open space technology, where everyone D-roles. When you are in a community, everyone D-roles, whether you are a chief, whether you are a community leader, you D-role, and no one has got a title. And the meeting takes off from that starting point to ensure that young people feel part and parcel of these processes, and to ensure that everybody at such a meeting will be feeling important. So some of the challenges that we also continue to face, mistrust of the process by citizens themselves, because some of the citizens, are victims to past atrocities that were done in Zimbabwe, and some of these atrocities have never been addressed. So they do not trust the process of initiating peace and reconciliation at the moment. So, and also the lack of readiness by the victims themselves and perpetrators to negotiate for peace and reconciliation, it continues to affect the healing process. And also the lack of political will by policymakers, to make sure that the perpetrators of past atrocities, for instance, the Gukula Hundi, are brought, to book and justice takes its course. And also the high unemployment levels, which is forcing most of our young people to be focusing on livelihoods instead of, these peace discourses, continues also to be one of the challenges that is we are also, facing in terms of the peace initiative in Zimbabwe. So, what is the advice that I also have to my YouthLead peers? So, firstly, is to ensure that peace and reconciliation mechanisms that are deployed, they must be traditionally relevant and modeled to promote grassroots participation and engagement, because these mechanisms must exist to fit into the already existing mechanisms, and that way I also believe the efforts to building peace will be successful. So to begin, the peace and reconciliation processes from the inclusivity of the processes. That also, emphasizes that these processes are not targets for perpetrators, not court processes, not witch hunting processes, but simply that these processes are there to facilitate true healing, sustainable peace, and reconciliation. And also the engagement of youth in peace building in a wider perspective can be ensured through the use of various tools, which include the arts, culture, tourism, sports, and education. So the innovativeness and creativeness of young people in those areas could be mobilized effectively by connecting them with wider peace building objectives. So we also have learned a lot, and the need to consider gender sensitive cases and the value of privacy and security of victims and perpetrators in peace building processes. We also noted that this is very important, because when you are dealing with issues to do with peace, some of these gender sensitive cases do arise, and they also need to be addressed accordingly. So what can be done differently if we were to start again the campaign, is facilitating truth telling, public apologies, and also restorative justice processes, which include compensation for the victims. So the role of YouthLead. Yes, YouthLead is a very important platform for me. It enables me to meet fellow change makers who are into peace building, and also it also enables me to learn some of the best practices and how other young change makers are doing in terms of participation in peace building in their own countries, and also in their own contexts and their own environments. So I'm also taking advantage of the nature of the YouthLead platform. It allows us to get updates, resources, and also opportunities that are to do with peace for other young people. So I'm able to access resources and opportunities that relate to peace building and also relate to the work that I'm doing, and this continues to shape positively the work that I'm doing in terms of enhancing the impact of the work that I'm also doing. In the future, I want to leverage the platform through the realization of sustainable means, to ensure that the platform offers its, and also that it is accessible to young change makers who are not digitally active, especially those in peace building initiatives, but from the rural communities where there is no access to the internet, to ensure that they are also benefiting from the platform itself. Okay, how can YouthLead peers, how can YouthLead peers help? So I would like YouthLead peers to share their best practices in their own countries, in others, and also to draw ideas on how I can enhance the peace building initiative I am currently working on to achieve true peace and reconciliation in Zimbabwe. So fellow youth peers can also assist me by sharing their experiences, how they are managing to do it in their own countries, and also they can be peers to ensure that I am guided in terms of the work that I'm doing, of building peace in Zimbabwe. And peace begins with me, peace begins with you, peace begins with all of us, and together peace is possible.
Thank you, Ronald. Thank you, Ronald, for the discussion once again, for the interesting discourse on how you've been promoting or encouraging youth participation in the peace and the civic process in your country. And of course, I would like to ask a question that was posed by one of our audience. And the question is basically asking on how you have been able to apply the much needed pressure in encouraging the government to focus and also consider the youths not just as beneficiaries, but then as stakeholders in the process of democracy and also decision making in the country.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. And yes, we have been doing a number of works in terms of engaging the government itself. And firstly, I would like to share with you that with the work that we are doing with the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, the NPRC, it was the recognition of the need of the participation of young people, because as NIO is representing the youth, we are also sitting in that particular commission representing young people. And apart from that, through the lobby that we are also doing, we are selected by the government to sit also in the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, which is an independent commission, which is also meant to be taking stock of the human rights and how young people are, and how some of these violations are taking place in Zimbabwe. And we are also sitting there representing young people. But in terms of political participation, 2018 Zimbabwe went to the elections, and we had a lot of youth candidates who were aspiring to get into office. But after the elections themselves, we only had a total of 5 young people who were then representing us in parliament. And unfortunately, one of them passed on, and may his soul rest in peace. And at the moment, we only have 4. So in terms of political participation and representation, in as much as we are doing these efforts to support young people's participation, I believe there is a lot that still needs to be done. And in April this year, we also submitted a petition to the Parliament of Zimbabwe. We were petitioning the Parliament to say the minimum age gap for one to stand as a presidential candidate, as a senatorial candidate, must be reduced from 40 to 35, to ensure that young people are also accorded that space and chance to be at the decision-making table. So yes, in Zimbabwe, in terms of engagement with the government, we are engaging with the government and also trying to push for
Thank you very, very much for your answers. And I think and I believe these are very, very important points. The place of lobbying, the pushing, for those involvement for youth, and I think that's very, very encouraging and insightful. Thank you, Ronald. Would at this point also advance to some of our Facebook questions.
Thank you.
Yes, hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, Rama. Hello, Ronald.
Yes, hi. Yes, how are you doing?
Yes, thank you for hanging in there. So we actually have some questions from our audience on Facebook.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, and the first question says is from Jamil, and it says, "My question is directed to the host and those watching. What do you guys think about using the same standard of democracy in the Western world to measure democracies in other parts of the world, with totally different cultures and relatively younger democracies? Secondly, is there any correlation between democracy and economic development?" So, Ronald, would you like to go first?
Okay, yes, I can go first. And thank you very much to the Facebook, attendee who also shared that question. And my response, I think, would be to say that it does not really, entail, a comparison between the West and those of the African countries. But what I'd like to believe is that democracy, the dictates of democracy are the same, and it doesn't necessarily matter whether it's Western countries or African countries. Of course, in terms of cultures, those do differ, but the dictates of democracy, of ensuring the respect to the human rights, of ensuring, the respect to the freedoms of association, assembly, and expression, I think those, continue to ensure an open democracy, and that entails the same. The correlation, yes, I think there is, a correlation between democracy and development.
Thank you very much, Ronald. Rahama, would you like to also take a shot at the question? Rahama? I guess we lost Rahama. Okay, I will proceed to the second question. And the second question is from Egbe. And the question goes thus: How did you get the youth to focus and be part of the project, and let go of the entitlement mentality that the government or their family needs to fix everything for them? I would like to repeat the question: How did you get the youth to focus and be part of the project, and let go of their entitlement mentality that the government or their family needs to fix everything for them? That's from Egbe. Ronald?
Yes, okay. Well, thank you very much as well to AK, for posting that question. And as of course, yes, at YouthLead, the selection criteria, that is young people, young change makers from countries around the world were selected to be part of this initiative, and we are focusing on various areas, which also include sustainable development goals, including SDG 16. So I would also love to believe that it is now the time for young people to take the lead in these processes, especially ensuring that young people are at the tables of decision making and being also spearheaders of sustainable peace in our societies. And I also believe that yes, our different governments, the families themselves, yes, they do have a role to play, but it is also up to us as young people to take up the spaces of participation and ensure that we are really changing the narrative for sustainable peace in our different communities and countries.
Thank you very much, Ronald. Rahama, would you like to take a shot at the question also?
Okay, no problem.
So the question says, how did you get the youth to focus and be part of the project, and how did you let them go of the entitlement mentality that the government or their family needs to fix everything for them?
Okay, thanks for this question. What we're trying to do, because as I said, everything we are doing, we're trying to make people taking the ownership of what we are doing. So to make youth engage or involved into our different activities, we're trying first of all, for example, if we have a project in the community, we want them and then we make them integrate into the project. For example, if there is one aspect of the project which can be implemented by those youth, so we make them doing this, and we make them realize that the government only can't do anything, so everything. So there is something they should do it for them, because it's for them, their family, also for the community. I don't know if it makes sense, but we're trying to make them involved in all level of the project we are implementing.
Thank you very much, Rahama. This has been good also. Thank you, Ronald. Yeah. Thank you, Rahama. This
welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. This will be the end of the webinar, so I'll just continue by handing over to Ikena. But before I hand over to Ikena, I would like to thank all those who joined the webinar today, from Tatiana from Benin, Mawa from Yemen, Mishak, Amin Ali, Abdul from Pakistan, and Hilias and Mohammed, and many more of those who joined. Thank you very much. And now I'll be handing over to Ikena, who will be closing off this webinar for us. Ikena?
Thank you. If you have not yet joined YouthLead.org, we encourage you to do so. This will enable you to network with other young change makers and join discussion groups. As a member, you can also post content, example, resources, blogs, short videos, events, funding opportunities, and you can join discussion groups. You can also post your projects to get more visibility for them. And for every contribution, you earn points and will earn badges based on those points. Every month, members also get the new YouthLead newsletter, which highlights young change makers. You can also follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And above all, reach out to the speakers and continue the discussion about this topic in the YouthLead discussion group. Before we close, we want to thank the many sponsors on YouthLead. In addition to funding, they contribute resources and youth networks to the platform. You will hear some of them on future webinars. And last but not least, we thank you for joining us. We hope you will join our next.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Thank you. If you have not